The state of California has a history of failed IT projects. Between 1994 and 2013, the state terminated or suspended 7 IT projects after spending almost $1 billion. And now comes a report that the University of California's new HR and payroll system, promised to save the university millions, will end up costing the UC almost $1 billion. What went wrong? We'll ask the state auditor, Elaine Howle. State auditor to UC. UCPath? It's on the wrong path.
Additional funding for the Maddy report made possible by a grant from The Wonderful Company, harvesting health and happiness around the world. Chevron's Coalinga oil field and Fresno County have been doing side by side for over 100 years. Learn more at doers.com. From the California Channel at the State Capitol and the Maddy Institute, it's the Maddy Report with Executive Director of the Maddy Institute, Mark Kepler.
Welcome. The costs of higher education keep escalating at major university systems like the University of California. They're constantly being asked to find ways to save money so they can invest more in the classroom. So when a project that's supposed to save money ends up costing millions of dollars, the legislature has some questions. Our guest, State Auditor Elaine Howle, has been tasked with answering some of those questions. Welcome back to the Maddy Report.
Pleased to be here.
So let's provide a little background for our audience. How big is the University of California in terms of revenues and funding? How many employees does it have? How is it administered?
University of California system is huge in California. We have 10 campuses, but we also have medical centers, we have research facilities, more than 200,000 employees.
200,000?
200,000 employees
Wow.
in the UC system. Their budget is $30 billion. They get about $3 billion from the state of California. Much of their budget is provided by tuition and fees from students, some endowments, those sorts of things. But a very big system in California.
It's interesting, $3 billion is paid for state funding, but it's a $30 billion in revenue, so they're getting money from other, they're almost becoming like a private university, big endowments and those kinds of things.
They receive a lot of money through endowments, but certainly tuition and fees is the majority of the money that they get.
Okay, so in 2010, the Regents passed a policy that they wanted the UC to become more administratively efficient. What kinds of things were they talking about there?
Right. They wanted the system to try to be more efficient. So they came up with what they called Work Smarter initiatives. And one of the initiatives was to look at information technology, some of the student information systems, payroll systems, human resource systems. Are there ways we can achieve efficiencies as a system in developing new processes for each of those?
You know, it's interesting. You think that a university, the cutting edge on research, would have a cutting edge kind of technology to handle these kinds of things, but they're still doing things by paper and pencil and that kind of thing.
Right, and what we also found, and in their business case they described, is we have 11 different systems. We have the 10 campuses and then some of the research centers and the medical centers, but each campus was using their own type of payroll system or their own type of HR, human resource system.
Right, so that gets, and just to be clear, there's something called the California Department of Technology, but they do not oversee the UC. The UC does it themselves.
Right, the University of California is essentially autonomous from the state executive branch. So UC has the ability to do a lot of these projects on their own without a state agency like the Department of Technology providing oversight.
But the governor does appoint people to the regents, and there's, I think, the lieutenant governor is also on the regents. So there are some political folks on there.
Right. The lieutenant governor is a regent, a member of the Board of Regents. It's a 26-member group, big board. The Speaker of the Assembly serves as a regent. So there are some political individuals who
but they're semi-autonomous. They
absolutely
kind of run their own shop. So that resulted, anyway, it resulted the UC Office of the President proposed something called UCPath. They're talking about this Human Resource Information System, and they wanted to replace the UC's outdated payroll system. Apparently it was 30 years old. It's hard to imagine.
Right.
But, so the promise was if we implement information technology to deal with payroll, we're going to save millions of dollars. How much money were they anticipating that they were going to save?
They thought they would save about $440, almost $450 million. The system that they intended to develop, UCPath, was supposed to cost about $306 million, and they thought they would achieve savings primarily in staffing efficiencies, reducing the number of staff working on these particular systems at all the campuses. They would save about $750 million, so
just
offsetting
a lot of that was staff.
Absolutely, a lot of it was staff.
You know, I was reading your report, basically cutting staff in half. They had 2,700 employees approximately, going down to 1,200.
That's right.
So it was going to be a big cut. And there's where your savings going to be. And it's not surprising, because a lot of organizations, your major costs are your personnel costs.
Your personnel costs, right.
So that was the hope. So in 2011, the university awarded a contract to Oracle, big company, to develop the new IT system. It didn't seem to go very smoothly, did it?
No, it didn't go smoothly at all. They intended to develop the system, and this was, payroll, academic personnel, human resources, personnel matters. So a lot of different functions would be handled in this new big UCPath system. But the problem was it was very complex. You had a lot of different university campuses needing to be integrated into this system. The intent was to start rolling it out in January of 2013.
Okay.
That didn't happen. Ultimately, what the UC decided to do was they cut Oracle loose in 2013. They essentially...
Pretty much early on.
Yes. Fairly early on. I mean, they awarded the contract in 2011. About a year and a half, almost 2 years later, Oracle is out. And UC said, we're going to take this system in-house and develop it ourselves.
Okay, and how did that go? I mean, so they take it in-house and everything is smooth from that point forward?
Absolutely not. Here we are in fall of 2017, and the system has been rolled out to a few locations, the Office of the President, but they have several waves. Now they're suggesting that this system will not be fully deployed and developed until 2019. So we've got at least a couple...
Originally 2013, now 2019, so 6 years. And I'm guessing where there are delays, there is money.
Right.
Because time is money.
Absolutely, time is money. So now the system that they thought would cost $306 million is now close to $1 billion. It's a little over $900 million once it will be fully deployed and developed.
The costs seem to be going up, and the delays associated with it also keep mounting. So why is that happening? We're going to go into more detail on that in a moment. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. I'm Mark Hepler with the Maddy Institute. The UC thought that using technology would save them millions of dollars. Instead, it's going to end up costing them almost $1 billion. And those cost savings that they thought were going to have, well, they've kind of disappeared. So what went wrong? We're talking with California State Auditor Elaine Howle, who authored a report that tries to answer that question. So how did a $447 million expectation in net savings become an estimated net cost of $942 million. I'm rounding up. When I said $1 billion, I was rounding.
Right, right, absolutely. Well, the biggest cost savings that will not happen is the reduction in staff. As we talked about a few minutes ago, they intended to cut their staffing from 2,700 people to about 1,200. This was because of efficiencies. You have an electronic system. You don't need people handling paper, et cetera. That basically evaporated, so that's a huge part of the cost savings that went away. But in addition to that...
It seems hard to believe that they wouldn't have staff reductions, because it would seem that using technology would result in savings. For example, you go to the supermarket, right? Now they have, your self-checkout. So instead of 6 checkers, you now have 1 checker and 6. It would seem like technology would save you staff.
In some cases that may happen. Right now we don't know if any of the campuses, we talked to 3 campuses, Berkeley, Irvine, and Riverside, and they basically told us during the audit, we don't intend to reduce any staffing as a result of UCPath being implemented on our campuses. The other thing is there is a center in Riverside, UC Riverside, that will be handling much of the software, maintenance, et cetera. So they've developed a center in Riverside that they're going to staff up with hundreds of people. So some of the people
there are some reductions, there are going to be additions there.
Absolutely. They may be shifted from the campuses they're on over to Riverside, or there may be some positions eliminated, but at this point, UC is not talking about any cost savings.
No promises anymore.
No promises anymore.
So the UC regents are supposed to provide oversight. Were they kept in the loop? And if not, why not? I mean, they should be saying, hey, their costs are going up too much, or the delays are happening too frequently.
Right.
Weren't they in the loop?
No, unfortunately, the regents weren't in the loop, and this is consistent with other audits that we've done recently with respect to UC's budget, UC Office of the President's budget. The regents meet about 6 times a year. They meet every few months. And we would have expected UCPath to be presented to the regents, updates to the regents, that, hey, we need to extend the time. We now are taking it in-house. We've fired Oracle, essentially decided that we're going to handle this ourselves.
I think a layperson would say, we call this a heads-up incoming.
Right. To try to keep the regions apprised of what was going on so that they knew about the increases in costs and the length of time this project was going to take. Unfortunately, we didn't see that. There were some updates to the regions, but even when we saw some of the updates, they didn't fully disclose what the costs were going to be.
I want to ask you about that because we read the UC response, oh, we gave 79 updates. I mean, we were providing all this information, and you were saying, no, not really.
No, not really. In the 6 years we looked at, 2011 through 2017, they updated the regents officially, formally related to UCPath about 7 times. 2 of those times were during the course of our audit when we were asking them, why aren't you updating the regents? The 79 instances are press releases where UCPath might be mentioned, or a document where...
a document search, did this word come up? Oh, that's kind of 79 times.
Absolutely. That's basically what they provided to us when they said 79 instances. And we said, no, that's not a formal discussion with the regents laying out, here are the cost increases, here's the amount of time it's going to take, this is why things are being delayed, this is why things are more expensive now. We didn't see that in very many instances.
And we were talking earlier about this alleged staff savings that didn't materialize. I mean, we're talking about $753 million. That's a lot of money. Pretty big omission.
A huge omission, huge omission. And even in some cases, as I indicated, when they did update the regents, they gave the regents a dollar amount that was not the full dollar amount that we saw in the internal records. So they were really understating, when they were updating the regents, what the actual costs were going to be.
You state in your report that the UC Office of the President did not always clearly identify the project's current cost estimate or the timing of completion. So some examples would be, let's say the cost estimate, they lowball it. Basically.
Right. In one instance, they were telling the regents it was about $220 million. We looked at their internal records, it was already over $300 million. They couldn't really explain to us why they told the regents one number when we saw their internal accounting showed a different number, a much higher number.
Yeah. 100 million, whatever. And so, and also the issue was delays. They weren't really informing the regions that, hey, this project is taking longer than we thought.
That's correct. And even in the most recent update during the course of the audit, the most recent one was, there was one in April of 17 where they were giving a very thorough update to the regents, but they never told the regents in that meeting that the $750 million in savings has basically gone away, and that this project now isn't going to be completed until 2019. So they, again, didn't disclose everything to the regents.
Yeah, I would think that some of the regents might be a little upset that they weren't fully informed about some of these things. So, you also indicated in your report that they were kind of vague when they gave explanations about the extensions of the reasons why they need an extension in the deadlines. That was another issue too.
Again, they weren't giving specific information to the regents. They were keeping at a fairly high level. Oh, we need more time. It's more complex. There's more, as they called it, interfaces with the various campuses. There's more complexity to this project, which it is. It's a huge project. But again, they weren't being very clear and specific with the regents.
So it begs the question, if the regents had been informed, would have resulted in catching some of these problems. We're going to talk about that in a moment. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. I'm Mark Kepler with the Maddy Institute. We're talking with California State Auditor Elaine Howle about a UC project that was supposed to save the UC millions of dollars, but it's going to end up costing the UC millions of dollars. So how could a project that was supposed to save money end up having the exact opposite effect? So your report notes a weakness here, and one of that, it goes really to governance, and that created a lack of transparency on the project. How so?
Well, the governance structure that we saw at the Office of the President really was, there was project leadership. So there were executives and other individuals working on this project, but they weren't necessarily, as we were just speaking about, reporting back to the regents, or there wasn't anybody over that project group, that executive steering committee and the executive leadership, saying, oh, wait a minute, this thing is going off the rails, or this is more expensive than we thought, what's going on? Somebody to be a check and balance.
And one of the things you mentioned in your report is like there's no mention in how they're going to communicate with the regents. Events that would trigger a response to, hey, listen, something's happening, or some kind of periodic structure even. I would report to them every month about what's going on. That wasn't there.
That's correct. That wasn't there.
Okay. So you know that after your audit, UC changed their governance structure. Good, they're responding. But you didn't think it went far enough.
Right.
What's the concern?
There was an improvement where they said they would keep the regents apprised of what was occurring. But the way they developed that reporting relationship, they just said they would let the regents know, rather than consulting with the regents and giving the regents the opportunity to query and question and say, well, wait a minute, we really need to understand why this is going to be more expensive and take longer.
It seems like they're really not, they're like saying, yeah, we'll let you know, but it's not really, they have an oversight function.
That's exactly right. And that's where we thought it was still weak as far as the governance structure. The regions need to have not just an advisory role, but really be a consultative role and decision-making role as to, do we want to continue with this project? Do we need to scale it back? Or do we need to just continue with what we're doing?
You know, you're also critical of the project management practices that were employed, and suggesting that, you know, some of those, if they're done properly, have kind of mitigated some of these cost and scheduling problems. And your IT expert, for example, talked about an overly aggressive project schedule, and that being problematic. Now, a layperson thinks, well, aggressive schedule, that's a good thing. Get it done yesterday kind of work, right? But instead, it actually caused problems. How so?
Right, because if you have a schedule that's too aggressive, you're not taking into consideration the complexity. You have 10 campuses, medical centers, research centers. You have a lot of moving parts, and you have a lot of different entities that need to integrate. So if you're trying to push the schedule too quickly, then you may be designing the system, you're not testing it, you're intending to roll it out, and then you run into problems, and then you're going to have to go back to the drawing board and try to fix things. That can ultimately be more costly than doing a good job of planning ahead and then monitoring that to see how well is development working, are we testing it enough, so that we know that this system is being properly developed and we're not going to have a lot of bugs at the end or deficiencies or defects that we have to go back and fix.
You know, even a person clearly not IT like myself would think, well, that's measure twice, cut once, right?
Right.
Be careful in the planning process so it doesn't cause problems down the line. There it seems like they were like trying to move this out quickly and problems resulted.
Exactly.
Okay, so you also identified some other problems. Your IT expert identified some other problems. You know, not maintaining an integrated plan, for example.
Right.
So what was that about?
An integrated plan is talking about scheduling, making sure you're monitoring the costs, looking at your, you know, time is money, as you said.
Right.
Making sure you're monitoring how long things are going to take, monitoring the cost, assessing that, are we being as efficient as we possibly can be. You need to have that plan integrated into the process so that you're constantly updating that plan so that you know where you're at, or that you know, oh, we're going to run into a problem here from a budget perspective, because this, as we said, program went from 300 million to 950 million. How did that happen? Right. And sometimes those cost increases were so significant in a short period of time, it shows they're not monitoring
They were
things.
monitoring some of the medium, which we call medium level risks, but not all the risks. That also caused a problem.
Right. Risk management is incredibly important in any kind of project management, but particularly in IT project management. And our IT expert looked for their risk management. And you have high risk, medium, and low. Right. Well, you want to make sure you're addressing the appropriate risks. You may not be able to look at everything, but you've got to look at those medium, high. And some of those we saw hadn't been addressed for a year, 2 years.
And there was actually, when I was in Wisconsin, there was a billboard from the Dental Association that said, if you ignore this problem, it will go away. And it showed a person with no teeth. I mean, if you don't pay attention to the cavities, it gets worse.
Right.
So let me ask you this. Bottom line, is it fair to say that the UC maybe greatly underestimated the size and complexity of this project?
I think that's fair, and I think they would acknowledge that. Again, they were looking at, you know, payroll, human resources, personnel information, student information systems, and that's a lot of information and a big system. If you have more than 200,000 employees, you're having to develop a payroll system for all those different job classifications, et cetera. So this is a very complex system they're trying to develop.
Yeah, well, this is not the only problem that you've discovered when it comes to state government contracts. We're going to have a discussion about that in a moment. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. I'm Mark Kepler with the Maddy Institute. We're talking with California State Auditor Elaine Howle about assuring state contract deliver the best bang for the taxpayer buck. And one of the things you want to do is have competitive bidding, for example. So you did a companion report on the UC looking at their service contracts. What did you find? Right.
The companion report was really, as you indicated, looking at service contracts. And the concern that a member of the legislature asked us to do this work, Senator Lara had, is UC using contract employees rather than hiring permanent employees, or are they laying off permanent employees and hiring service contracts? And there is a policy that UC has where if we're going to displace employees, essentially lay them off and hire a service contractor, we have to do a cost-benefit analysis to be convincing.
Well, let me ask you. So the reason what's driving this is cost, right? They think they're going to save money.
Right.
They actually did save money. The service contract workers were cheaper, right? Isn't that a good thing?
Well, in some cases it's a good thing, but The problem we identified in the report is they're supposed to do that cost-benefit analysis and provide it to the Office of the President.
So they're making an assumption that they're going to save money. They really don't know.
Exactly, right. And when we looked at their cost justification, it hadn't been fully developed. It didn't include all of the costs they would have incurred in using service contractors as opposed to in-house employees, or rather
Show
than
me the money.
Exactly,
Right? Show me the money.
exactly. So we had some concerns with that.
Okay. You've also, by the way, the IT issues are not new. There's almost a disturbing trend going on here. A few years ago, you did a report on the California Department of Technology and its oversight of state IT programs. Now, they were not involved. The California Department of Technology was not involved in this UC project.
That's correct.
But you do see kind of similar problems here. The rollout of buying and installing new software. Is there a pattern here?
There certainly is a problem in California. Of course, our state is huge. A lot of these systems are big, like the UCPath system. We've looked at a variety of systems that the Department of Technology is responsible for because it's the executive branch agencies. And we are seeing problems with a lot of projects. There are some that go fairly smoothly, not perfectly. But the ones that we've found problems with is really indicative of poor planning in the front, not incrementally approaching the project and saying, okay, are we at a no-go stage, which is a new life cycle. It's called a project approval life cycle that the Department of Technology is using, where now they require agencies to provide analyses and updates, and it's, are we in good shape?
So
okay, we're going to go forward, or no, we're going to pull the plug on this before we spend $200 million, and then
knowing when to say when.
Exactly.
Right. It's
exactly.
interesting. IT problems. You think about IT problems, the rollout of Obamacare, the ACA, but they brought in some people from Silicon Valley, and they got that system fixed and it worked very well. We're in California. Why is the state having so many problems with IT projects?
Well, I think part of the problem for our state, again, is the complexity of the projects, the size of the projects, and I quite frankly think that, the state of California, government, fully transparent. I think if you looked at the private sector and they were honest with you, they would admit that they have problems too, but they never see the light of day. But I do think that the state of California and the Department of Technology is trying to embrace new techniques, this project approval life cycle, the go, no-go decisions, having agencies really prepare ahead of time, because the UC process, it's a business transformation project. They have to change their processes.
It's not just technology, it's a whole change of business.
That's exactly right, and that's something that I think our state doesn't do as particularly well.
You mentioned something I think it's really interesting to kind of underscore, and that is a lot of people make the assumption, oh, government's inefficient, they don't know what they're doing, but you mentioned in that earlier report, I took a look at it, and you found that 38%, and this is the private sector, 38% of large projects fail and 52% have significant challenges. This is not unique to government. It happens in the private sector as well.
Absolutely true.
It's just that we're more aware of it because it's in the newspaper.
That's exactly
or it's in your report.
That's right. I mean, government intends to be transparent. We have a responsibility to the taxpayers.
I want to be fair to everyone there. So listen, last question. Okay. What kinds of things do you think need to be done so California taxpayers can avoid these kind of IT snafus in the future?
Right. So the UCPath example, we could use that one. What we suggested to the university is to develop some specific thresholds. So if this project is going to increase in cost by 10% or 12 months, then that is a trigger.
There's a trigger there.
For there to be oversight by the regents. In the state system, it would be a trigger for the Department of Technology to take a look at a project.
Look at the numbers. If it's going to increase by more than X million dollars, let us know.
Right.
Or a delay of X amount of time, let us know.
Exactly. So it forces that reporting to an oversight body.
Sounds like a good plan. Well, I want to thank California State Auditor Elaine Howle for joining us. If you want to stay current on state and local politics, you can sign up for the Maddy Daily by logging on to our website at maddyinstitute.org. This is Mark Kepler for the Maddy Report. Thanks for joining us.
The views expressed in the Maddy Report are those of the individuals participating in the program and do not necessarily reflect those of the California Channel or the Maddy Institute. If you'd like to share your thoughts about the points and opinions expressed on the Maddy Report, visit our website at maddyinstitute.org.